3 years since the ousting of Hosni Mubarak, and Egypt still remains a volatile nation, with political division serving as a major hurdle in the rebuilding process. Earlier, I spoke with Manal Omar, Associate Vice President for the Middle East and Africa Center at the United States Center for Peace. I asked her about the impact of these latest demonstrations by rival factions.
There is a significant amount, particularly from the Muslim Brotherhood, who did boycott the referendum, so we haven't seen their voice. They were very clear that they don't even acknowledge the process or the Constitution or the roadmap. That's for the primary people who are leading the demonstrations. However, the support for them still remains to be very little. What's important to note is that it's not that Egyptians are blindly following the military. It's a conscious submission to the military because they want stability, they want to feel a state, and people are very frustrated with demonstrations that have, in their opinion, limited tourism, had huge economic impact, and so they're looking for more stability in the next phase.
I was going to say, many Westerners are looking over their shoulders thinking, well, you don't have access to the military, you don't have freedom of speech, you're not allowed to protest now. So many of what little civil rights you have been taken away. Why would you support this new military regime? And why is that? Tell us about the average daily life of an Egyptian.
I think that's a really good question because, again, it's not a naive trade-off. It's a conscious trade-off that's being made. You do have the academics, the liberals, the civil society, and very little independent media that is cautioning, saying the same thing. But the vast majority of people are saying that, the traffic of Egypt, the day-to-day life of Egypt, the job security, all of those crucial issues, security in terms of local crimes is really the priority, and that they're willing to give up and trade off for stability. So many leaderships in the last 3 years, and people don't want to go through another transition. They want to feel the stability that they believe will bring back tourism and initiate economic growth.
How would you describe the Muslim Brotherhood? Wasn't it an organization in Egypt that a vast majority of the people there were affiliated with? And how do you change their views overnight when they're called a terrorist organization? They're labeled a terrorist organization. How do they find a place in this new regime, in this new society?
I think that's really the key to any success for Egypt moving forward, is how are you going to be truly inclusive of whoever was part of the Muslim Brotherhood? And the challenge falls on both parts. The challenge falls on the military. A lot of the crackdowns are unnecessary because of the support the military has, and they've moved beyond the Muslim Brotherhood. They have now moved to the independent, to the liberal, to the original youth who were part of the revolutionary, like the April 6th movement. So they've moved beyond the Muslim Brotherhood, and I think that in itself is going to be problematic if that continues to be the attitude, and we haven't seen any indication that it won't be. I think it's also important for the Muslim Brotherhood to recognize that a transition has happened. Whether it's legitimate or not, the transition has happened, a roadmap is in place, and they need to find a way to reintroduce themselves back to the public, because in terms of the street, they just don't have the popularity that they imagine themselves to have.
What can we expect going forward at this point?
I think that the most important thing is for everyone to really recognize that 3 years ago today, there was a revolution that wanted change in daily life. I believe that climate of fear that was there before 3 years under the Mubarak regime has been broken. What we're seeing isn't a return of a state of fear. We're seeing Egyptians making a conscious decision for stability. But at the end of the day, if real reform doesn't happen, particularly within the economic reform, but also within state and police reform, then I think that we could see another revolution or another back to the streets in a few years, because people are going to judge whoever's in power based on their daily lives, not based on the laws.
Manal Omar, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.